Well, again, it's about 10 minutes past midnight here. So a happy new day to everyone from
Yeah.
Philippines.
Of course, she's a CPE educator, right? All the Episcopal chaplains that want to get together and visit are all CPE supervisors.
They don't actually do any.
Yeah, sorry about that. Well, so I'm going to talk about creation care and indigenous spirituality, particularly that of the Igorot indigenous peoples here, of which I am a part of. So, so here is a bowl of rice, which, as you know, is staple food for Filipinos. While eating, if even a bit of this, a small bit, a tiny bit of this rice falls from one's plate and left uneaten, or a bit of rice is left on a plate uneaten, our elders in the indigenous communities would say that rice is crying. And they would cry. They would cry with that while picking up the tiny bit and eating it. They would express the same lament over anything that is wasted. So anything that's wasted, they would also always say that that mountain is crying, that tree is crying. It is a way of life. It's an indigenous way of life that we call ayu, which would be roughly translated as nothing should be left to waste. It is grounded on a belief that every material thing has a spirit. And if that material thing is wasted, then the spirit is also wasted and angered. And if the spirit is angered, it would result in the spirit causing misfortune, an illness, or any other misfortune upon those who are responsible for the waste. Here is a mountain in my hometown called Mugao. There was a time when if this mountain is burning, everybody, wherever you were and whatever you were doing, everybody would rush up to that mountain to help put off the fire. Everybody would do that. This is because, again, our people believe that on top of this mountain is the home of spirits, which have protected and watched over our villages since time immemorial. So we cannot allow the home of our spirits to be burned. So again, if something happens to the forest, everyone is obligated to help stop whatever destruction is happening there. Here is part of my village up in the mountains of the Cordillera. One day in 2013, I have an uncle living in the city who had visitors from our home village. The visitors were there to tell him, they sought it out to tell him that that their ancestral home is going to be transferred to another place. So they were dismantling the ancestral home and transferring it to another place. And because of that, they're going to return the land on which it was standing to my uncle. My uncle, who was born in the 1960s, at the time, 1960s, was pleasantly surprised because he never knew that that land was owned by his family. He never knew that. As narrated by the visitors, as narrated by his visitors, that piece of land was given to him or was given by my uncle's forebears, my uncle's grandparents. They were given to the parents of these visitors when they were married. We got married in 1948. 1948 was when they got married. And my uncle's grandparents gave that land to that couple who were married, getting married at the time in 1948, under a practice that we know that we call gawat. or to give something that you own or something that you possess, to give it to somebody so that others may use it. It proceeds from the indigenous concept of stewardship, that we are only stewards of land. We are only stewards of material things. And it's not really ownership over these things. We are stewards and not owners of this land. So under this practice, if a new couple gets married, they start a family, and the family cannot provide them with a land on which to build their house, the community will provide that. The community will provide a piece of land on which they would settle down. But in those years and in later years, there was no more available communal space. So since the community cannot give a communal space, any private individual will do this. Any private individual will do this, and they will gladly do it. Because again, it's a sense of responsibility that the community has. The understanding is that the couple will take care of this property that was given to them for as long as they needed it. But if in the future they no longer need that piece of land in the future, then they must give it back to the source. So again, there's a strong sense that nobody can have more than one piece of land to use while others do not have. So in the case of my, again, in the case of my uncle, he never knew that that piece of land was belonged to his family. But that was the practice that was given by our grandparents, by his grandparents. And since the family did not, they were transferring their house, did not use it anymore, they were giving it back to him. Here is a lake, again in my hometown. And during my childhood days, the surrounding lots in this lake were successively cultivated by different persons. So a family is cultivating it now, but 6 months from now, there will be another person doing it. 1 year from the time, another person is also doing it. Another person is cultivating it. Why was this so? Why was there a successive change in the person cultivating? Because our community reserved the lots surrounding this lake for cultivation by those who were lacking in provisions, those who did not have much, any piece of land on which to support themselves. But if in the future you get to have an upgrade, then you'll have to pass it on to somebody similarly situated. Again, that's how people understand our relationship with the land. It's stewardship. It's not really ownership. So these are among our practices. Ayaw and Gawat are among the indigenous practices of our people that are grounded on the fundamental belief that persons have spirits which survive them after death, and which will continue, the spirits of the dead will continue to live with the living. It's founded on the belief that material things have spirits, and that every corner of this creation of nature is home to the spirits. Because of the consciousness of spirits abounding everywhere and the constant need to respect and appease them, our people's life, the Igorot's life, is both a material and spiritual journey. And there is no separation of what is actually material and what is spiritual. Unfortunately, however, it is this fundamental belief in spirits that has been denounced by our early Christian missionaries as being incompatible with the Christian faith. This, according to them, is paganistic and animistic, and that needed to be completely exorcised from a person in order to become a Christian. With the relentless denunciation of indigenous spirituality as paganistic and indigenous values, or these indigenous values and practices have greatly weakened over the decades that followed. and in danger of being consigned as mere museum pieces like the G-string here. In this picture is a G-string. It is one of my, I think it's my most precious possession because it came from my grandfather, passed on to my father, and then passed on to me. But I have never used it. It's a museum piece. It's a museum piece. So that's what's happening. Unfortunately, indigenous values and practices are now being consigned as museum pieces. So our mountain in Bissau, mountain in our hometown, which we believe to be the home of the spirits when it's burning, people are leisurely walking the street. People are drinking beer in their homes, watching television. Nobody cares anymore. The lake that has always been offered to anybody who is in need, it's now privatized, and land has become a commodity to be used by owners to the exclusion of all others. However, in recent years, contemporary theology, which posits that God was already present in these islands even before the missionaries arrived, considers indigenous values in the way of life as seeds of the gospel. These are seeds of the gospel upon which the Christian faith can be grown and propagated. More specifically, according to the late great Dr. William Henry Scott, an Episcopal lay missionary to the Philippines, he says that from the standpoint of the Christian missionary, Christian introduction should not seek to detract from the pagan consciousness of the supernatural in his life, but to redirect it towards its preference. That is what we are doing now. There's now a lot of theological reflections and studies here, a lot of dialogues with indigenous people, and our ancient moorings have found support in the Old Testament declaration that the Spirit of God hovers over all of creation. Why are we questioning people who believes that spirits are living with them? Spirits, material things have spirits. Every corner of this world, every corner of this creation is a home of the spirits. Why do we call this paganistic when the Old Testament clearly teaches us that the Spirit of God hovers all of creation, and thus, as indigenous communities expressed, the Spirit of God is in every material thing and in every corner of creation. The New Testament teaches us that the indwelling of the Holy Spirit in every person, everywhere, and in everywhere affirms the indigenous people's belief that everything in this world is both material and spiritual, and every act that a person does is both a material and a spiritual journey. And so with these affirmations, indigenous spirituality as expressed in lived values and practices, such as ayaw, kawat, inayan, kasiyana, all of these things that we have. These are now becoming alive in our communities, and these are now an integral part of our desired expression of our faith towards love and solidarity with everyone and care for creation. This is how we can embed creation in the spiritual life of the Episcopal Church in the Philippines. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Floyd, for that wonderful sharing and reflections on the values and practices of indigenous communities and how they influence our creation care ministry. And